Well, it had to end sometime, and that time's tonight. The final stave, Stave 4, The Last of the Spirits, from A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the air through which the spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment, which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come, ghost of the future. I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be a better man from what I was, I am prepared to bear your company, and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? It gave him no reply. The hand was pointed straight before them. Lead on, lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is a precious time to me, I know. Lead on, spirit. They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to spring up about them. But there they were in the heart of it, on change amongst the merchants. The spirits stopped behind one knot of little businessmen. Observing that the hand was pointing to them, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. No, said a great fat man with a monstrous chin. I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead. When did he die? Inquired another. Last night, I believe. Why, what was the matter with him? I thought he'd never die. God knows, said the first with a yawn. What has he done with his money? Asked a red-faced gentleman. I haven't heard, said the man with the large chin. Company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me, that's all I know. Bye-bye. Scrooge was at first inclined to be surprised that the spirit should attach importance to a conversation so apparently trivial, but feeling assured that it must have some hidden purpose, he set himself to consider what it likely could be. It could scarcely be supposed to have any bearing on the death of Jacob, his old partner, for that was the past, and this ghost province was the future. He looked about in that very place for his own image, but another man stood in his accustomed corner. Though the clock pointed to its usual time of day for him being there, he saw no likeness of himself among the multitudes that poured through the porch. It gave him little surprise, however, for he had been resolving in his mind a change of life, and he thought and hoped he saw his newborn resolutions carried out in this. They left the busy scene and went into an obscure part of town, to the low shops where iron, old rags, bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. A grey-headed rascal of great age sat smoking his pipe. Scrooge and the phantom came into the presence of this man just as a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop, but she had scarcely entered when another woman, similarly laden, came in too, and she was closely followed by a man in faded black. After a short period of blank astonishment, in which the old man with the pipe had joined them, they all three burst into a laugh. "Let the charwoman alone be first," she cried, who had entered first. "Let the laundress alone be second, and let the undertaker's man alone be the third. Look here, old Joe, here's a chance. If we haven't all three met here without meaning it..." "You couldn't have met in a better place. You were made free of it long ago, you know, and the other two ain't strangers. What have you got to sell?" "What have you got to sell?"
Half a minute's patience, Joe, and you shall see. What odds, then? What odds, Mrs. Dilber, said the woman. Every person has a right to take care of himself. He always did. Who's the worse for the loss of a few things like these? Not a dead man, I suppose.
Mrs. Dilber, whose manner was remarkable for general propitiation, said, "No, indeed, ma'am."
If he wanted to keep him after he was dead, wicked old screw, why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd had somebody to look after him when he was struck with death, instead of lying gasping out his last there, alone by himself.
It's the truest word that ever was spoken. It's judgment on him.
I wish it was a little heavier judgment, and it should have been. You may depend on it if I could have laid my hands on anything else. Open the bundle, old Joe, and let me know what the value of it. Speak out plain. I'm not afraid to be here first, nor afraid to let them see it.
Joe went down on his knees for the greater convenience of opening the bundle, and dragged out a large and heavy roll of some dark stuff. "What do you call this? Bed curtains?"
Oh, bed curtains. Don't drop that oil on the blankets now.
His blankets?
Whose else do you think? He isn't likely to take cold without him, I dare say. Oh, you may look through that shirt till your eyes ache, but you won't find an hole in it, nor a threadbare place. It's the best he had, and a fine one, too. They'd have wasted it by dressing him up in it if it hadn't been for me.
Scrooge listened to this dialogue in horror. "Spirit, I see. I see. The case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends that way now. Merciful heavens! What is this?" The scene had changed, and now he almost touched a bare, uncurtained bed. A pale light rising in the outer air fell straight upon the bed, and on it, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this plundered, unknown man. "Spirit, let me see some tenderness connected with the death, or this dark chamber, Spirit, will forever be present to me." The ghost conducted him to poor Bob Cratchit's house, a dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and the 4 children seated around the fire. Quiet. Very quiet. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues in one corner and sat looking up at Peter, who had a book before him. The mother and her daughters were engaged in needlework, but surely they were very quiet. "And he took a child and set it in the midst of them." Where had Scrooge heard those words? He had not dreamed them. The boy must have read them out as he and the spirit crossed the threshold. Why did he not go on? The mother laid her work upon the table and put her hand up to her face. "Oh, the colour hurts my eyes," she said. "The colour. Oh, poor Tiny Tim." "They're better now again. It makes them weep by candlelight, and I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home for the world. It must be near his time." "Past it, rather," Peter answered, shutting his book. "But I think he has walked a little slower than he used to these last few evenings, Mother. I have known him to walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder very fast indeed." "And so have I," cried Peter, "often." "And so have I," exclaimed another. So had they all. "But he was very light to carry, and his father loved him so that it was no trouble. And there is your father at the door." She hurried out to meet him, and little Bob, in his comforter, he had need of it, poor fellow, came in. His tea was ready for him on the hob, and they all tried who should help him the most. The 2 young Cratchits got upon his knees and laid each child a little cheek against his face, as if they said, "Don't mind it, father. Don't be grieved." Bob was very cheerful with him and spoke pleasantly to all the family. He looked at the work upon the table and praised the industry and speed of Mrs. Cratchit and the girls. They would be done long before Sunday, he said. Sunday? You went there today, then, Robert? Yes, my dear, returned Bob. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you some good to see how green a place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him that I would walk there on Sunday. My little child, my little child. He broke down all at once. He couldn't help it. If he could have helped it, he and his child would have been farther apart, perhaps, than they were. Spectre, said Scrooge, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me what that man was, with the covered face whom we saw lying dead. The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him to a dismal, wretched, ruinous churchyard. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed to one. Before I draw nearer to the stone to which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of things that will be, or are they the shadows of things that may only be? Still the ghost pointed downward toward the grave by which it stood. Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends, to which, if persevered in, they must lead. But if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Say it is thus with what you show me. The spirit was immovable as ever. Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. Am I that man who lay in the bed? No spirit, oh no spirit, hear me. I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been, but for this intercourse. Why show me this if I am past all hope? Assure me that I may yet change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. For the first time the kind hand faltered. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lesson that they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone. Holding up his hands in one last prayer, to have his feet reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. Yes, and the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own, to make amends in. He was checked in his transports by the churches ringing out the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Running to the window, he opened it, put out his head. No fog, no mist, no night. Clear, bright, stirring, golden day. What day is it? Cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes, who perhaps had loitered there and looked about him. What day is today, my fine fellow?
Why, it's Christmas Day.
It's Christmas Day. I haven't missed it. Hello, my fine fellow.
Hello.
Do you know the poulterers in the next street but one at the corner?
I should hope I did.
An intelligent boy, a remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? No, not the little prize turkey, the big one.
What, the one as big as me?
What a delightful boy. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my buck.
It's hanging there now.
Is it? Go and buy it.
Walker,
exclaimed the boy. No. I am in earnest. Go and buy it, and tell them to bring it here, that I may give them the direction where to take it. Come back with the man, and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you half a crown. The boy was off like a shot. I'll send it to Bob Cratchit. He shan't know who sent it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. Joe Miller never made such a joke as sending it to Bob's will be. The hand in which he wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did, somehow, and went down the stairs to open the street door ready for the coming of the poulterer's man. It was a turkey. He could never have stood upon his legs, that bird. He would have snapped them off short in a minute like sticks of sealing wax. Scrooge dressed himself all in his best, and at last got out into the streets. The people were there by this time, pouring forth, as he had seen them in the Ghost of Christmas Present, and walking with his hands behind him, Scrooge regarded everyone with a delighted smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that 3 or 4 good-humoured fellows said, "Good morning, sir, a Merry Christmas to you." And Scrooge often said afterwards that of all the blithe sounds he had ever heard, these were the blithest to his ears. In the afternoon he turned his steps towards his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to go up and knock, but he made a dash and did it. "Is your master at home, my dear?" said Scrooge to the girl. "Nice girl, very." "Yes, sir." "Where is he, my love?" "He's in the dining room with his mistress." "Oh, he knows me," said Scrooge, with his hand already on the dining room lock. "I'll go in here, my dear." "Fred!" "Oh, why, bless my soul," cried Fred. "Who's that?" "It is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner." "Will you let me in, Fred?" Let him in. It's a mercy he didn't take his arm off. He was at home in the 5 minutes. Nothing could have been heartier. His niece looked just the same. So did Topper when he came. So did the plump sister when she came. So did everyone when they came. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. But he was early at the office the next morning. Oh, he was early there. If he could only be there first, to catch Bob Cratchit coming late. That was the thing he had set his heart upon. And he did it. The clock struck 9. No Bob. 1:15. No Bob. Bob was a full 18 minutes and a half behind time. Scrooge sat with his door wide open that he might see him come into the tank. Bob's hat was off before he opened the door, and comforter too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock. "Hello," growled Scrooge in his accustomed voice, or as near as he could feign it. "What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?" "Oh, I'm very sorry, sir. I am behind my time." "Yes, you are? Yes, I think you are. Step this way, if you please." "Oh, it's only once a year, sir. It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday." "Now, I'll tell you what, my friend. I am not going to stand this sort of thing any longer. And therefore," Scrooge continued, leaping from his stool and giving Bob such a dig in the waistcoat that he staggered back into the tank again, "and therefore I am about to raise your salary." Bob trembled and got a little nearer to the ruler. "A Merry Christmas, Bob," said Scrooge with an earnestness that could not be mistaken, as he clapped him on the back. "A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family. And we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop, Bob. Make up the fires. And buy a second coal scuttle before you do another thing, Bob Cratchit." Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew. or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but his own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with the spirits, but lived in that respect upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed that knowledge. May that truly be said of us all, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. That is the end of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Thank you for coming on this journey. Merry Christmas.